All right.
Yes.
Hey everyone, it's Jeannie here, and today I am so honored to be joined by an extraordinary Kansas City woman who her life story is just it's in a film. That's basically says it all. She started as an alcoholic at age 13, which lasted in an addiction for 22 years. And now her life is completely transformed and she's bringing healing to thousands and thousands of people. Her new documentary, Bobbi Jo Under the Influence, will be out shortly. And Bobbi Jo, thank you so much for joining me. I am honored, like I said,
Well,
really,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
really. The documentary takes us through your life from childhood to the extraordinary work that you're doing now, and I love that. I'm always a sucker for real life, but also, you don't hold anything back. You're an incredible woman of faith, and your life didn't always start out like that. So for those who haven't seen, maybe we can give a little synopsis of just kind of who you were and who you are, and about what they can expect in the documentary.
Okay. Well, I came from a family. I have two older brothers, and my dad was a police officer, always worked two jobs. And I got to tell you, that's just a big part of my story. I always longed to have a relationship with my father. And this is like a common thread that I have found with women with addiction issues. And my mom had mental health issues that were not being addressed. And so I started working a full time job at 12 years old. I had the opportunity to go out with some of the older people at the job. And my first drink was at 12. And, I had a speech impediment. I was always a chubby kid and I had really low self esteem. And so when I found this alcohol, I thought, boy, I have arrived. You always think you're funnier and better looking and a better dancer, right? But I just thought, this is it. And from the time I was 13 years old, I was an alcoholic and an addict. And that, I'd lived in a house where we had a purple elephant in the front room and everybody just walked around it. Nobody said, hey, we have an elephant in our front room. If we didn't talk about it, it was non existent. So we lived really in silos in my house. Everybody did school, work, and just we were very siloed. It's not like we had any communication. My mom was a hoarder too. And so there weren't places for us to sit and eat dinner and talk about things. And so I didn't know the Lord at all. I did not know. When I was a kid, I probably went to Sunday school 3, 4 times, and that's all I knew. Um, so I knew of a God, but as I spiraled more and more out of control, I was in my addiction for 22 years. And it took me to a lot of sordid places. And this is the sad thing about it. Once you keep going to a new depth of despair, everything, your mind tells you, oh, well, this is just how it is. I remember a point when I was homeless, and there was an old guy that had a mattress and an old love seat and a lantern under a bridge. And I used to be envious and think, man, if I could just have those things, I would be all right. And so my addiction led me to homelessness, being trafficked, human trafficked. Um, of course, he would beat me up severely. And when my face would be too messed up, I would have to live under a boxcar next to a liquor store, the boxes on the back of semis. There's a part in a 12-step program that says incomprehensible demoralization. I know exactly what that means. And I'm telling you what, I was so in the depths and I became an it out there. I was one of those people laying by the side of the road when you pull up and you go, oh my God, how can anybody be like that? Well, it happens to people. It happened to me. And
Can I ask you right then, because you talked about something important in terms of your upbringing.
Yes.
And maybe there's a parent out here that'll be watching or reading this that maybe because of the way they were raised, they've kind of taken that parent style. What could have been done differently to kind of help you not feel like I'm going to turn to other things? What could have made you feel the support possibly that you needed to not go down that road?
I think if my dad wouldn't have always worked two jobs and not been present, I think that if, we would have actually done things as a family and not be so separated under the same roof. One
Mhm.
of the things that I do at Healing House, and we always have, is I've kind of created at Healing House the family that I always wanted. So we come together at 5 o'clock in the evening. We pray together. We eat dinner together. We talk about what's going on with one another. And we have this, and you know what? If you're just sitting down for a few moments, you can look at somebody's face and see if they've got something going on. And we never
Yeah.
did that. And a lot of families miss that because, they might be in the same room together, but let's face it, everybody's on their phone doing their own thing.
Right. Yeah.
If you're not paying attention to the way their demeanor, and you're not doing that on a regular basis, people get lost in it. And I just
That's
got
true.
lost. And, it was nothing but the grace of God that brought me out. I ended up in a detox in the inner city. And this is what really made an impact. Is so I always felt worthless. And when you get out there in your addiction, and I told you I felt like an it, I went over a year without looking at myself in the mirror because I couldn't stand to see what was looking back at me. And so the blessing, I this detox, everybody was in there. There's 18 bunk beds, no toothpaste, no toothbrushes, no soap. Everybody's dirty. So when I got out of the detox, I got into a treatment center. But what I did to supplement my income back in those days is I baked things like banana nut bread, zucchini bread, and I'd take them to the flea market and I'd sell them. So what I started doing when I got out of the treatment is I would buy like the little tubes of toothpaste and the little bars of soap, hotel stuff. I could get it really cheap. So I started taking that back to the detox, and I started giving them my leftover baked goods and hygiene products. And I'm telling you what, as silly as that sounds, but me doing that, I did it at first because it made me feel good. I kept doing it because it just became the next right thing to do. And
Yeah.
God showed me, I started filling up because, addiction is selfish and self-centered. Even though you might be homeless, it's still selfish. And so when I started helping these other people and sharing my experience with them, I started feeling like, man, maybe I could do something. Maybe there's something I could be good at. And
Mm.
the Lord just took those hygiene products and that detox and those loaves of homemade bread changed my life. And he
That's where
started,
your
yeah,
ministry began right in that moment.
yes, absolutely. And it's just went from there.
Let me ask you this before we talk about the incredible stuff that you are doing now. Where was God? So many people uh, can never get to where you are now in your faith and knowing that God is who helped you out. Where was God when you were young? Where was He through it all? I believe we live in a supernatural world, and even when we don't know He's there, I know He's there, right? That's what my faith tells me. But I would love to hear from you. Have you been able to kind of go back into that and say, well, there was God there and there and there, even despite all the horrible things you had to go through?
God always had to be with me. That is a promise because the things God gave us all free will, right? He gave us free will. And I ran into a lot of people with being in my addiction that those folks were using their free will badly. But I know for a fact that if God hadn't have been there with me, I would have been dead at least 100 times over anyway.
Wow.
I survived circumstances that most people would have died from. And so I know for a fact he had to be there with me. Even though horrific things were happening, that's people doing their free will. God was with me or I'd be dead. He spared my life through all the chaos and nonsense and stuff I was caught up in. So I know for a fact that he was there with me
That's
through all of
beautiful.
it.
Yeah.
But
So what was, I'm sorry.
we have to be at a point in our life when we're willing to accept God. And you know what? For me, I was sober 3.5 years before I really accepted Christ deep down in my heart. And it was a death. It was my mother's death that brought that on. I'd taken care of her with cancer for 3.5 years, and she died on December 30th of 1998. And I had had some roommates. I was 3.5 years sober, but my roommates had relapsed and left. And my boyfriend decided on New Year's Eve, I had been going to church. I liked the praise and worship part, but I didn't like all the preaching. So I go to every. But he got me, my ex-boyfriend got me to the church. But anyway, I come home on December 31st. I have my mother's urn for her ashes. And I come home and my house is empty. So my two roommates had relapsed. They were gone. My boyfriend's not home. And I'm like, where's he at? So I drive out to the church to see if he's there, and he was not there. And my heart felt like it dropped down to my gut. And I started bawling because it seemed like the rug was pulled out from all my support system around me. And my dad had just died 3.5 years before. So I went home that night and I got in the bed and I was just crying out to God. And I said, please don't let me go back to where I came from. Lead and direct me, Lord. Just take a hold of me. And I fell asleep praying to God and crying. And fear had always covered my life. Fear of being cute enough, fear of economics, fear of everything. And when I woke up, January 1st of 1999, the Holy Spirit had taken up residence in me. And I knew that I was going to be okay. That was the first time in my life that I ever felt I was going to be okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I still tried to take my will back and forth periodically. What I thought that I want a boyfriend. I want this and that. And you know what? I just let the Lord take a hold of me and just heal me and show me and lead me. The Lord doesn't speak to me audibly, but he speaks to my heart. And he always tells me, this is the next thing. This is what you do. And I just follow it. And when I say I'm a Christ follower, I am a Christ follower. When he speaks, I go. Whatever it is, I go.
Yeah, and that's evident. Everything that you're doing is the reflection of the hands and feet of Christ. It's amazing. I want to ask you right there, you lost your support system and it helped kind of put things into a different perspective for you. There are families who have people in addiction and they're trying everything possible to help that loved one, but the loved one just won't turn. Or there's Christian families, there's pastors who have people in their personal family that are struggling with addictions and nothing is getting through. What do you think it is that gets through to the one who's in bondage to addiction?
I think that we just have to come to a point of brokenness. People, I didn't come to the Lord because I didn't come to the Lord basically because I wanted to be this goody two shoes, right? I came to the Lord because I was out of options, right? I had tried a lot of different things. And I mean, this was my last thing. I had just not even acknowledged God in my life prior to that. And I think we have to get to this point of brokenness where we're willing to say, okay, God, I've exhausted my efforts. I'm yours. Just please take me. And I got to say this too. When you have a loved one that's using drugs and alcohol, prayer is such a powerful thing that continue to pray for them. And, my little saying is there's always hope for an addict or alcoholic. As long as they're breathing, there's always hope. And I think the families, you don't want to enable people, but you do want to be there, and especially be there if that person becomes willing to accept the help. And the other thing is, treatment, drug and alcohol treatment can cost $75,000. I
Yeah.
also want people to know that there's free treatment that they can get into. There's free recovery housing, like Healing House does recovery support services. So we basically take people right off the street. They might have a Price Chopper sack with everything they own in it. We get them hygienes, we get them clothing, we get them stable. They get put in this beautiful home. All our homes, we have 14. All of our homes are beautiful. And they live exactly like I want to live, right? I've been 25 years sober. And they just walk in there and they feel the presence of God. And you know what? Even the ones that have their hearts really hardened, God permeates the place. And nobody's ever left here without finding a relationship with Christ.
Wow.
And that's amazing. And
Wow.
so, yeah.
That right there is, they get their lives clean and sober, but more even further than that, they get to know the love of the Lord. And let's talk about Healing House. You have 14 homes.
Yes.
So for those who, and I'm so grateful that everyone goes through the journey with you in the documentary, but just a little synopsis: with an inheritance that you get from your mother, you're able to purchase your first healing home, where you
Yes.
start to bring in women who desperately needed a recovery house because there was no room for them. Now
Right.
you have 14 homes. Are the apartments separate? Is that something
Yes.
separate?
Yes.
Yes. So, and I even heard in a recent interview that you're even looking into a strip mall to try to.
We got it.
You got it. So, I
Yes.
mean, I'm extremely inspired, and just like, yes, I pray that everyone who sees this and watches the documentary will want to just to do that where they are. Because
Yes.
tell us about Healing Homes, and how did that even come about? If somebody's like, I mean, I'd like to help, but like, I don't know how to help, and I don't have money, I don't have resources like Bobbi Jo did. Tell us kind of about that journey, venturing into actually really making this, a full-time thing that you're doing for people
Right.
everywhere.
Well, I had the inheritance. I had $50,000, and I was looking for places to help women. And I don't want to tell too much of the movie, but there was an abandoned old nursing home that I kept being drawn to. The Lord kept drawing me to this place. And there was a realtor sign outside, but the number to call, the mailbox was always full. I couldn't leave a message. So one day I was around the corner from that old nursing home, and I went in and looked at a house, and the guy wanted 150,000, and at once it's set up right to help accommodate, a lot of women. So when I went back out to my car, I said, Lord, when you want, I'm impatient. When you want me to have this, will you please just drop it in my lap? Because I'm getting impatient. Now I turn the corner and I'm on the side street of that old nursing home that I'd been drawn to so many times. Real estate agent was walking up the steps. And I just said this prayer a minute earlier. God, so I turned the street and the real estate agent is walking up the stairs. So I'm like, pull my car over and I run up. I said, can I come in and see this place? She's like, well, if these folks don't care, I don't care. I went in and it reeked of urine and cigarette smoke, dark wood paneling, windows were knocked out. It was awful. But guess what? The Holy Spirit was sleeping inside me saying, this is it. This is it. It was a 23-room house for $50,000. The exact amount I had coming in the mail.
Wow.
And so this area, I sold my house out in the suburbs. And 2 months later, the dope dealer pimp moved right in next door to the original house. And so I claimed his house in Jesus' name. Year and a half later, we got the dope man's house. And so every house has a God story attached to it. I mean, just the way he worked, there's no doubt that he wants it present and showing the way and making a way. And so now we have 14 homes. Initially, it was for single women, and then men, and now families even. So we have 40 apartments, 40 of them, and then we have 14 homes and there's 200 people that live with us each and every day. And so we have a recovery community center that holds up to 350 people. There were Friday nights before COVID, we'd have 250, 300 people in there for a Bible study.
Wow.
It's something called Alpha, like beginners Christianity. And so we would have like 250, 300 people in there on a Friday night, praising God and staying clean and sober, not just going without drugs and alcohol, but they're learning to be servants of God and helping others and change. So we've really changed this whole community where we live. It used to be gunfire, drug dealers, pimps, gang members. You don't see any of that anymore at all. And so the whole dynamic has changed in our community. It's just amazing. You know, sometimes when I had some of my staff put a book together of our houses and what they were for. And when they brought me the finished product, I'm like, when did this happen? You know, you're serving all the time, and God has just been on the move. It's an amazing journey, and I'm honored that God would pick me to be part of it. And so we just keep trekking. We got the strip mall that you were talking about. There was some nonsense going in on at that place. We had a tattoo shop, and our recovery community center patio was to the back of this tattoo shop, and they were out there drinking, getting high, and we're right side by side. So I said, Lord, you know, we can't. So we were able to get the building. So there's nobody else smoking weed now, right next to the people trying recovery. So we're finishing that one by one. We're opening up a beauty shop for people returning from prison that have their certificates in certificates. So
that's
just
amazing. So for people like me and others who want to do something but don't really know how to, or maybe feel like, you know, I can't do that. That's only people like Bobbi Jo. You know, how can people be a part of doing something, you know, doesn't have to be the same. We're all called, you know, a little different. But if outreach is really on our hearts, which I think as a Christian, you know, it should be right. How can they take that step, or what would you say to advise other people to be as bold and faithful as you are?
I think just open your eyes and look around you, see what's going on around you. Like right now, my car is full of coats and stocking caps and gloves and water, bottles of water. And so if I see somebody that's not dressed, I pull over and I say, do you need a coat, honey? How about some gloves? You know, there's all kinds of ways. You find out your homeless shelters and things like that. Give a donation of soap or toothpaste, toothbrushes. Look what's going on in your, sometimes we don't even see right what's right there. If you have an elderly neighbor that you know she's an elderly person, and how is her grass getting mowed? Go mow her grass. See, I think if we just open our eyes, we're going to be able to see. We're created to want more, right? More attention, more food, more this, more that. I hope this movie puts more on everybody's heart. And I hope your more is for Jesus and serving him.
I love it. That's perfect. I was going to ask you, what did you want people to take from it? I feel like that's how the Lord's been leading the interview. So I love it. Let me ask you this before we wrap it up. It's called Under the Influence. And who are you under the influence of now? And you've said it a bunch of times.
You know who I'm under the influence. I love that title because I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol for so long. And absolutely, I am under the influence of God and Jesus Christ today. And I will be there until the Lord takes me home. This is what God created me to do. And I'm a very blessed woman. And I am so thrilled at the opportunity for this message to get out there and help other folks that are suffering in their addiction, or family members, or people that are just sitting still right now and only staying in their little circle. God calls us to do more than just love the people directly around us, right? God calls us to do more.
Thank you so much, Bobbi Jo. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or
Let-
that we should know?
Man, to tell you the truth, it's been a joy to talk to you. I am just excited about what God has in store for us, all of us. And I hope this movie sparks something in every single person. I don't hope it, I pray it, that this will spark something in every person that gets to see it and call them to do something more than they're doing.